range of the sine function is between -1 and 1, right? So in other words, the values, the function values for sine x will be between -1 and 1. Okay. Now we can plot a few points. Sine of 0 is 0, sine of 90 is 1, sine of 180 is 0, sine of 270 is -1, sine of 360 is 0, right? We can also plot a few points, additional points, and if we plot those points, and we can even plot more points there, right? And if we join those points, we get a curve, and that is the sine curve, right? The sine function is a periodic function. In other words, it repeats itself every 360 degrees there, right? As you can see, in the first quadrant it's positive, in the second quadrant it's positive, in the third quadrant I get negative values, and in the fourth quadrant I get negative values, right? Now the amplitude of the sine function is 1. As you can see, the coefficient of sine there is 1 there. And this one is, if you look at the distance between the minimum and the maximum, the total distance is 2, so the amplitude is half that distance between the minimum and the maximum. So 1 plus 1 is 2, divided by 2 gives me a amplitude of 1. Now let's look at the cosine function. Let's first of all have our axes there. The period for the cosine function is 360. First quadrant is positive, second quadrant is negative, third quadrant is negative, fourth quadrant is positive. The range for the cosine function, again, is between -1 and 1. -1 included, +1 included. The minimum value is -1 and the maximum value is +1. Sine of 0 is 1. We can plot a few more points. Sine of 90 is 0. Sine of 180 is -1. Sine of 270 is 0. Sine of 360 is 1. As you can see, it's positive values in the first, negative in the second and the third, and then positive in the fourth, right? And if we join that curve, that's the cosine curve, right? It's also a periodic function. This pattern is repeated every 360 degrees. So I can go on the positive side, I can also go on the negative, which we will look at later. The amplitude again, the amplitude is the half the distance between the minimum and the maximum. So between -1 and 1, the distance is 2, and half of 2 is 1. Also, you can see from the equation there, cosine x, so that's 1 cosine x, so the amplitude is 1. Now let's look at the tangent function. Again, let's get a graph. The tangent function's period is not 360. The tangent has a period of 180, right? Let's look at this. Positive in the first quadrant and negative in the second. Then positive in the third and negative in the fourth. You can see it repeats, the pattern is repeated every 180 degrees. Positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, right? The range for the tangent function, just note here, is between -infinity and positive. It doesn't have a minimum, it doesn't have a maximum value. And because of that, it does not have a amplitude. So if I plot a few points in the first quadrant, plot a few points, calculate a few points in the second and in the third and in the fourth, and if I join that, that is the curve that I will get, right? Notice tangent of 90. Tangent is undefined for 90, and we refer to that as an asymptote, right? So there are two asymptotes, one at 90 and one at 270, right? You can see between 90 and 270, again, it's 180, right? Same period there. Now, let's look at the transformations of trigonometric